Welcome back to Praxology, where theology fuels the mission of the church. We're helping leaders to think biblically, reflect theologically, and of course, act missionally. This season is all about discipleship, and this half of our season focuses on what we're calling issues in discipleship. My name is Sean Smith, and I'm on today with special guest Noah Ellenwood. We're both missionaries with Josiah Venture, serving in 2 different countries of Central and Eastern Europe. And we're going to be talking with Noah about some innovative discipleship that he is doing in the country of Montenegro. So Noah, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, as I said before we started recording, I've been looking forward to this episode for a long time because if there's one thing I know about you, it's that you have a pioneering spirit, I suppose. It seems to me. You like to start something new, but not because of it being new, but because you think this new thing is needed to actually reach people where I'm at, what I'm doing. So I'm excited to talk about more of those things. But first, if you could tell us more about yourself, things that you enjoy, what you're up to, things that you're up to.
So things that I enjoy, pretty simple. I think maybe a lot of missionaries in our circle love coffee. So coffee is definitely up there. And then anything Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. We just got a dog and I named him Gimli because he has a red beard. And so anything Lord of the Rings for sure is something I enjoy. But also I think a really cool thing is I love my job. I get to do something that's a lot of fun. That I can't believe I get to do, and I enjoy discipling young men and leading them to Jesus.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And I didn't plan this on purpose. However, I'm just going to grab my coffee cup because it says free will, I chose the coffee. Uh-huh. And then on the other side, predestination, the coffee chose me. Uh-huh. I'm drinking actually a nice cup from Peru this morning.
Okay.
It's been great.
I'm drinking a nice cup from Ecuador right now. So,
The difference is I did not roast my own coffee, and I think you probably roasted your own coffee.
Yep. This is my roaster broke, and this is my last little bit that I roasted before I can get it fixed. So, it's been a month and a half.
Wow.
Dwindling down my stores of coffee.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a bummer because we have a conference coming up for missionaries all across the region, and we always enjoy your coffee. We'll have good coffee otherwise, I'm sure. So, and we'll maybe talk more about coffee and how that connects to ministry after a little while. You live in the Balkans, and it's no secret that Balkans love their coffee. And it's a fun way to connect with ministry. But first, I wonder if you can tell me how you view discipleship. So my question is sort of 2, but what is discipleship to you, and how are disciples made?
Good question. Yeah, I think it a lot of times depends on the context that we're in. And so I'll be speaking for the context that I'm in. But it looked different when I lived in the States, worked a 9-to-5 job and joined a junior high and led young guys there, versus here where it's my full-time job. And I get to spend time with young guys. And for me, what it looks like here in Montenegro is there aren't many young believers. And so one of the things that my wife and I felt very called to is how do we walk alongside young people, bring them into our home, give them a place to stay, eat, and just live life alongside them so that they can grow in seeing what it looks like to follow Jesus. That means we meet weekly. They'll call. There's a couple guys that come here in the mornings and work on their own work, sit at my table. We drink coffee. I work on my work, but they sit here in the same space. And we talk about all sorts of things from coffee to pinball machines to Jesus. And so I think a lot of it just looks like, how do I live life alongside them? Where one of the things that I would say is difficult is the line gets blurred between what's work and what's friendship, what's work and what's just relationship with people. And that's something that we have to hold openly, constantly, and it's hard finding where is it? Are these friendships? Is it work? Yes and no. But we get to love on these young people and point them to Jesus.
Yeah, if you're willing to explain some of that tension of a lot of people will use the term relational discipleship. And even for somebody who's not a missionary, say they have a full-time job or a job of some kind, and then they meet with some people in a small group, a big group, or one-on-one, it can sometimes feel a little bit like sometimes it's work, sometimes it's not. How do you navigate that tension that you're describing?
Yeah, I think one of the ways that we've navigated it is just being okay with it, with work kind of spilling into, or work spilling into our everyday lives. So even one of the ways that we've done it with Sabbath, we as a family like taking a Sabbath, but then as we read scripture, we realized more and more Sabbath is meant to be done in community. And if we want our young people to know Sabbath, we can't just pull away as a family and go, this is our Sabbath day. And so we take a family day each week that's for our family. But then Sabbath, we actually celebrate with our young people. And they get to learn what it means to take a Sabbath, to stop and rest and purposefully focus on Jesus and on God during that day. But those lines, like you said, there is a tension. Is this work? A guy wants to come over and hang out. Do I say no? What are my boundaries? What aren't my boundaries? How do I? One of the things, because there aren't many believers, and these young people, their schedules, I would say Montenegro is very, they don't have much structure. They love to be spontaneous. And so I'll get a phone call, 30 minutes, hey, can we hang out? And so one thing that we've done is there are certain times that we have boundaries of no, we can't hang out. But for the most part, my wife and I understand each other. If I text her, hey, this young guy can meet in 20 minutes, can I go get coffee with him? Similarly with her, can I go meet with this girl? Okay, I got the kids, go. And we just have to be ready to engage. Instead of going, no, you need to let me know a week ahead of time. That's not this culture. That might be the right. When I lived in the States, that was a lot easier to go, hey, let's plan this out, let's meet weekly. But here it's 20 minutes before, can we hang out and get coffee, and I need to talk about something. Okay, I need to drop what I'm doing and hold my days much more openly than I was.
Yeah, and I think the Bible speaks to this as well. If you ask what is the definition of discipleship, it actually is really difficult because the Bible talks about it a lot, but never really defines it as a dictionary definition. Instead, we get a bunch of sort of contextualized approaches. What Paul says, this is what it looks like in Corinth, and that's different than how he's writing to the Romans. And the whole picture of the Bible is really, if you could put that all together and say this is discipleship. But one of the things that blends those boundaries, I think, is exactly what you're saying. There were times where even I'm recognizing Paul kind of did something similar. He would have a plan, it would kind of get disrupted, and he would have to sometimes be okay with that plan while also holding some sort of boundaries. Now, I hear you talking about that as well. And I think that's probably an important piece that keeps you guys, you and your family, I would say maybe, I don't know what word you would use, like stable or something in the midst of rapidly changing ministry. Having something that you fall back on. It's like, hey, we're going to flex here, but we're not going to flex in these other areas. Is that fair?
For sure. And one of the things that's great about the culture here in Montenegro is family is really important to people. And so we're taking a family day, they're okay with that. What felt wrong for us in this context was saying, hey, we're taking a day off and we don't want you to be a part of our day off. And so wording it as this is our family day, then they go, oh yeah, go be with family. The focus is family. The focus isn't time away from you, our young people, that we're both our friends and our work, our relationship, right? That tension that we were talking about, wording it, or the way we word it, is really important with our young people. It's not escape from you, it's just focus on our family. And so I would say
Yeah,
those days are really important to us.
no, that's fantastic. It's I see those two going together. I know that's a growing idea, the idea of taking a Sabbath. We call it a family day as well, but I mean, for those listening, if you have a family, you have children, that kind of makes more sense to children. But also, it does kind of make sense to other people, doesn't it? Like oh, you can go be with your family. That's fine if you want to do that. Um, Now we'll get in more to how disciples are made and what you're doing to reach younger people in Montenegro. But first, I'm going to blame this question on Killian. He's normally on our podcast, and he just decided to dive right in with failures. So if I can, I want to ask you about a time that you tried to make disciples in the past in Montenegro, and it just failed completely. It didn't work at all.
Yeah. I think it kind of goes together with my prayer, how I pray and my prayer walk with the Lord and how I spend time with the Lord. And the reason I say that is because I think early on when we moved here 6 years ago to Montenegro, our prayer was very much, Lord, give us opportunities to share the gospel, to make disciples. And that shifted over time to, Lord, give us the eyes to see what you're doing here, how we can join you in making disciples and sharing the gospel with young people. Once we had that shift, I think that was a big change for us, because before that, I think a lot of times I was doing things out of my own strength. And so I was trying to move relationships along, trying to get guys to I added weight to their shoulders that they couldn't carry, but I wasn't in tune with the spirit on what I should be doing with them. I was just trying to get them moving, get some sort of movement, instead of trusting the spirit, being in tune with the spirit. This is what this young guy needs right now. He doesn't need that much weight. He can't bear that much weight, responsibility. And so I think early on, I remember one young guy, I cast a huge vision with a lot of weight, and then I didn't hear from him for 2 or 3 years, right? And that was really hard, because I'm like, oh, I thought I was doing the right thing. I was talking about the gospel. This is what you can do. Our organization, Josiah Venture, young Josiah, you can change your country. And that shut him down immediately, to the point that I didn't hear from him for 3 years. And so that was a big learning. I remember just the couple months after that being like, okay, Lord, what did I do in this moment? What I thought I did things correctly, and just feeling from the spirit, you did things out of your own strength. You weren't listening to me in that moment. You weren't in tune with me. And so I think when we see our mistakes, or we see when we tried and it didn't work, a lot of times it's because I'm doing it out of my own strength instead of listening to the spirit, and how I relate to those young people.
Yeah, if I can play with an idea here, what I hear you saying is the phrase overburden, like put too much on the scale, and you've caused the scale to not function for a while, like this kid going off for 3 years. um, and it strikes me that I mean, Jesus talks about burden, his burden being light, and when Paul says things like "Follow me as I follow Christ," he is placing sometimes a quite heavy burden, but it's only on particular people. And with other people, he's nuancing that, and he's placing, it seems like a lighter burden, or he's not overburdening people in the wrong way. If you were to go back in time and walk with the Spirit, what would be different, do you think,
Yeah, great question.
in your example of the 2 or 3 years? Yeah.
I think one of the things I've seen be different. One, I understand the culture more. That was early on. I understand the culture both with young men. What is big burden to them? But I think one thing I would do differently, looking at even Paul and his relationship with Timothy, is starting slow. Hey, come with me. Come join me. Come see what I do. And let's just have a relationship. Let's get lunch. Let's talk. I have to go visit this pastor, this church. Come with me. Instead of casting too big of a vision too early, that a vision that they've never seen before, never thought of before, and it's just so big, so vast. Like you said, it's breaking that scale, because the burden that I put on is the burden from me, that I want to see something happen here, instead of the burden that is light, right, or the yoke that is light. And so I would say what I would do differently is start slower and pray more. Pray more specifically for that young man, that the Spirit would give me eyes to see how I can lean in, challenge, not just step back, but lean in and challenge and actively listen to the Lord in my relationship with that young man.
It, I wonder some things about how that person receives it, but maybe we can move forward out of that example to more current experiences that you have. So what are you doing instead now that is working out?
Yeah. I think prayer is big. And so one of the young guys that actually just recently gave his life to Jesus a year or two ago, um, one of the things I heard from the Spirit in my discussions with him, actually our relationship started because I would go play soccer, trying to meet young guys on the streets. And he approached me and very earnestly, he wasn't trying to be mean in any way, but his question was, Noah, how do you enjoy playing soccer so much when you're so bad at it? Great. Thank you so much. I thought I did well today, but he was genuinely asking, when you miss a goal, it doesn't affect you. You still have fun. You're not upset by it. And so he's going, what is that? And so we started that conversation with identity. What does it mean to be a child of God? I belong to something that's greater than soccer, than scoring goals. So we started our relationship that way. And then as I was discipling him, meeting with him, oftentimes what I heard from the Spirit is, Noah, wait, listen, stop. And there'd be moments that he was thinking I would time it 5 to 10 minutes, thinking over a question I just asked. I wanted to speak out of it feels awkward, it's silent, or I need to say something and add more wisdom to this conversation, but felt the Spirit just say, slow down. I'm at work. Let me change the heart. You're here to do what I'm asking you to do. So when I ask you to speak up, speak up. But if not, just sit and listen. We go on walks and say a couple of things and just walk and listen to the Spirit together. And I think that really changed how I disciple young people. I need to listen to the Spirit in each and every one of these relationships, not just contextually in Montenegro, but contextually in each and every one of these young people. So when I pray for them, I pray for different things that the Spirit's asking me to be thinking about and speaking into their lives. But it's different for each young person, but it all starts with prayer. I need to be praying and be in tune with the Spirit. Otherwise, I probably would have talked too much for that young man, and he would have been overburdened. This guy would have been overburdened with my thoughts, what I know, instead of listening to the Spirit and letting the Spirit change his heart.
Yeah, you're saying some really important things there. In my world of youth ministry research, a lot of people talk about it often. It's a very simple thing, but it's so hard to do. Giving young people a voice. And it seems to me that when you're slowing down, you're slowing down because of prayer and because you're listening to the Spirit. But what seems to be happening in the young person is that slowing down gives them space to be silent or to think, and then to say something that you can then work with. So you're meeting them kind of where they're at, as opposed to what you think they need. Yeah. Do you feel a tension there? Like, when do you, a lot of people, you want to meet somebody where they are and give them the voice, and okay, their struggle right now is they really want to read the Bible, but they're not reading it at all. But you think that their issue is that they just want a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and that's just distracting them completely from everything. Maybe those are related, but if you keep talking about that and they want to talk about something else, then you're kind of butting heads or like rubbing against each other in the wrong way. So when in your approach, do you know when to speak into that person's life in a way where it's like, you really do need to grow in prayer. I know that you're not focused there right now, but this would really help, versus just taking their voice and going where they want to go, that tension?
Yeah, I think there's both need to happen in conversations where we listen, we let them share what they're feeling, and then oftentimes that leads to Noah, what do you think on this, or what are your thoughts? Great, now let's go. I can share my thoughts, or I'll wait, and if it goes silent, I'll say, do you want to know my thoughts on this, or do you just want to keep sharing with me what you're feeling? because they have to be open to hear what I'm going to say if they're going to receive it. But just like with the young man that I talked about earlier, I'm not in charge of changing their hearts, and so I both need to be prepared when I write the prayer, "Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth and as it is in heaven." The kingdom is in us. We get to bring the kingdom to these places, whether it's a group of people or young people that we are entering into a relationship. We get to bring the kingdom and show them something that's different, that's in us, that's Jesus. And sometimes that does a lot of work in and of itself. But I also want to be prepared in and out of season to jump right into the conversation and be bold when the Spirit says, "Speak up." And so I think I oftentimes the way I thought of it before was I just need to be bold and speak up. But sometimes it's I need to be bold and go and just be present, because the presence of Jesus is in me and I can bring him with me to these people where they're going to experience Jesus. If he's in me, he's going to come out. He's going to what I have to say. Hopefully, if I'm in Scripture, if I'm in relationship with Jesus in prayer, it'll be fully, or it'll be infused with Jesus. And so I trust that I'm going to be bold. That's not one of the things when we started praying the prayer, "Lord, give us the eyes to see opportunities you're giving us." Man, right away, young people, what are you doing here in Montenegro? Boom, great opportunity. Let me tell you what I'm doing here in Montenegro. Do you want to hear more about it? Do you want to know more about Jesus? What do you believe in? But I think another big thing, Sean, is questions, right? We see Jesus at the well with the Samaritan woman asking questions first before he came in with, "This is what I think you need to do." He asked her questions about who she was. And that's a big thing. It builds trust, and it allows people to share who they are with us.
Yeah, and towards that, Czech Republic is a very different context, and you grew up here. I have learned that my natural approach is just I'm curious. I want to ask a lot of questions, but if I ask too many questions without somewhere in the middle sharing something about myself, people start to feel manipulated. Oh wow, there's so much nuance, and that's where prayer, as you keep mentioning, and walking in step with the Spirit really matter. If I can connect one thing before I ask you about other innovative tactics, I suppose you're trying for discipleship in Montenegro right now. Um, and this comes from, he's not a Christian. He's a generational guru, as many people will say. His name is Tim Elmore. And he said something about Gen Z 10 years ago, maybe 8, 6, something like that. And he simply said, if you're an older person, listen to a young person. And if they don't say like what you were just saying, "Noah, tell me about this," or "Noah, what do you think?" If a young person doesn't say that, he says that it's completely fine if you ask them a question. "Would it be okay if I share my perspective?" And you have to then just kind of be okay with if they say no, maybe it's no, not right now. In the future, you'll be able to. But asking questions, I think that's something I want to draw. That's a really important thing. And what we're talking about, all of these things, listening to the Spirit, prayer, asking good questions, taking the young person's voice into account, but also knowing, when mentoring is important, when to actually say something. These are all facets of what innovation looks like. I think some people, innovation says a very new, fresh idea, and oftentimes it can be, but the underlying elements are exactly these foundational things for discipleship. But with that in mind, what are some of those more innovative things that you are trying in Montenegro that you see that are having traction, they're working?
Yeah, I think when I was thinking about this question, one of the innovative things, we're obviously trying to plant a lot of test fields to see what will grow. So we've tried different ways of reaching young people where they're at. Some have worked, some haven't. So I think one innovative thing is being okay with failure, being okay with not getting as far as you hoped you would. But also one of the visuals that we were given early on in our time here from the pastor is Montenegro, this Balkan region, physically it's covered in rocks. And if you drive through this region, you'll see stones, all over fields, but you'll see these little stone walls that shepherds move stones, built walls to make enclosures for their sheep, but also allow their sheep to graze. And one of the things we had to change our perspective and just go, we're okay, Lord, if we don't get to see the harvest. But we will move these stones out of this field, prepare the way, plant seeds where we can. Obviously, we pray that we get to see a glimpse of the harvest. That'd be awesome. But I think our posture in what we were doing was a big change in just seeing fruit here in Montenegro. So some of the things we've tried to plant, I've done sports, I've done workouts, we keep trying to get into schools. One of the things that we've seen take traction is coffee. Like you said, Balkan region is all about coffee. And so I offer coffee courses where young people can be certified as baristas and use it for their work here in Montenegro. And we've seen some traction in that. But what we've seen is people want relationship. They want authentic relationship, like you're saying with those young people. They really want to know. Or you were sharing about check. If you ask all the questions, it feels maybe disingenuous, or it feels like you're trying to manipulate. But I need to share about who I am too, and they're actually okay with who I am. They just want the authentic me. And so I think a big part also of innovation, I don't know if it's innovation, right? It's hard for me to, it just feels like this is what how we need to be, is we as believers, as missionaries, need to be the hardest people to offend. I should be the hardest person to offend because I know who I am. I know to whom I belong. And you can say whatever you want. It doesn't bother me. I remember sitting down playing basketball, getting water after meeting a guy playing basketball with him. And he goes, "Isn't what you believe, isn't that a cult or a sect?" That's what I've been told my whole life. And I'm like, man, I hope not. I really hope it's not. But I really enjoy, it's a relationship with Jesus. Can I tell you more about it? Sure, tell me more about it. But he leaned into it. And instead of getting a defensive, like, no, why would you ever say that? That's not true of us. But I really are, like, being genuine in who I am and in the question was something that we saw, and not getting offended was a big deal here in Montenegro, because many people I think it's really easy to get offended in an honor shame culture. Similarly to Czech, it's an honor shame culture. So the absence of honor is shame. And playing basketball with young guys, if I'm beating them, or not even if I'm beating them, if they miss a shot, they're still winning by 20 points. They feel that shame. And so being able to offer, hey, it's okay. Keep playing. You're doing great. I'm not going to be offended if you beat me is a really big deal. I hope that answers your question, Sean.
Yeah, no, and it gives me, as typical, many more. I'm thinking now of a youth leader. If you were to talk, maybe not to another missionary, but to a youth leader, a similar question, but it's different, and you know a lot more of the nuance than I do. I know for sure, of honor and shame and guilt, how that plays out in Central Europe and in Balkan regions and so on. And because of that, I think oftentimes failure is viewed as like, I'm just going to be very strong for a second. Failure means like God said, don't do that. And it's like, well, then it's like the door closed. And so failure is a stamp of disapproval. And you're saying, I'm trying to teach them that, failure is okay. They don't have to take that on as their identity. So how can you help a youth leader work with a young person similarly? How they take that shame on and say, no, it's like, it's okay. There's freedom. We can fail. We can talk about it. That's relationship. How does that function, do you think?
Yeah, and I think even with what you're saying with shame and guilt is something that I think it's okay to feel guilt when I sin. It leads me to Jesus. It leads me to the Lord. I sin, that I should feel guilt, but then dwelling on it and leading to shame. That's where Jesus died to break those chains. I don't need to live in shame of what I did. And so one of the things that I think is super important with our young people is, or as we, if I were to say this to a young leader, is speak truth into that. Again, with honor and shame cultures, the absence of honor is shame. And a lot of times, what that means, at least here in Montenegro, is people get defensive right away when they mess up because they want to put the shame on someone else. They don't want to, they can already feel the shame. And so they're really quick to shame. They're really quick. There's no neutral, there's no in between honor than something than shame. It's either honor or shame. And so in Eastern Europe, I think that's a lot of these cultures are honor shame cultures. Speak truth. Shame isn't what we're meant to feel. It's like you did mess up. Find that neutral. It's not, maybe it's not honorable, but it's also not shameful. You messed up, keep moving forward. You missed that shot, keep shooting. I think I see it so often with young men in sports specifically, and it gives me an awesome way to speak in truth. Is they feel shame immediately after missing a shot, even though they're beating me 20-0. But they're completely destroying themselves inside because they did something wrong. And so, how do we speak truth and identity into these young people and tell them about who they are in Jesus? And actually, that could be a really sweet way for them to come to know who Jesus is by their identity in him, that it's not based on shame. There is guilt when we sin, but Jesus did not come for us to stay in shame.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, indeed, Jesus died that we can. I mean, the chain of that shame is broken. Amen. There's a connection I see with students. I mean, teaching with Morelands College, we have students from all over Central and Eastern Europe. And one of the things that I see that really works and that students have reported as this was really impactful for me to grow in Jesus is almost identical to what you're saying here. Um, and it relates to, I suppose, asking a question. You messed up, keep going. But how I know I'm wondering out loud if the bridge between honor and shame it is something about failure, celebrating failure. I mean, there's a lot of leadership books right now that talk about celebration of failure. If we put that into a question, I wonder if you've ever asked it before. You messed up. What did you learn, and what can you do differently the next time? Like,
Yeah.
it's okay, you know?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. When it comes to sports, I just recently sat with the young guy out on my balcony here, and we talked about what identity means when you mess up, because it's so hard. And going, so who are you, and what is true about who you are? Are those things true about you? No. And so when you fail, believing that that's who you are actually isn't the truth, and the Bible says it's not the truth. And so I think leading them back to Jesus, this is not who you are. Again, I think the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, had been through so much, yet Jesus still offered her that you can be a child, like you're a child of God. That's who you are, not all these things that you've done in your past, but you are mine. And so follow me. And they need to hear it. Sometimes they need to hear it over and over. A young guy I'm discipling, when I pray for him, I feel like the Spirit's saying it's going to be a long journey of him needing to hear this over and over until it clicks. So keep speaking this into him, because he's had a whole lifetime of hearing that he's not good enough. He won't ever be good enough. And that's what his identity is. And so I think it takes a lot to really go, no, that's not your identity. Follow Jesus. It is a beautiful thing, and there is that neutral ground. Failure doesn't need to mean shame. It can mean guilt, but guilt leads us to Jesus to repent and to repair. So it just takes us right back to him. Again, I hope that answers your question, Sean.
Yeah, you're drawing to mind a verse. I had to look it up. Hebrews 6:19. So the writer of Hebrews says, "We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure." And I connected that idea of an anchor and made me think of this verse. Of you're helping a young person to find an anchor that keeps them stable in a truth that's foundational. That when something happens, and it's going to, you can go back to, I messed up. but I don't have to take that on because I have something more foundational, more stable, more concrete. Um, do you have another example? Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Early on in our time here, I read a book called, I think it was called Rejection Proof. And it was this man that went along asking questions, asking things of people, expecting no. Because as people, one of the things we fear the most is hearing no. And I think in sharing the gospel and entering into relationships, we're afraid of hearing no, both out of protectiveness of God, I think, and of ourselves. And so, how do we enter into these things and go, it's okay to hear no, it's okay to be rejected, but I need to build up a tolerance to that if I'm going to go out and share these things with people, because they'll reject it, right? The gospel is telling people that they're not perfect, they need help, they're sinners, but there's good news. And so people, that's going to be a hard thing for people to hear. And so how do we enter into these relationships going, I'll probably be rejected. A guy will leave me for 3 years, but guess what? If the Spirit's at work, he messaged me again a year ago and said, can we start meeting again and hanging out? I have a lot of questions. Praise God. But I think we have to be okay with being rejected in some ways.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, being rejected and going slow. That's what I'm hearing you say. I think maybe two more questions. Um, First, I wonder if you have another example of putting this into practice to give a real illustration of some of the things you're saying now. If there's another story from coffee or the basketball court or something like that. Just the nature of helping a young person not take on something as part of their identity, but celebrating failure, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we see it pretty often with culturally. I think young men here are really hard on themselves, and so often, whether it's over coffee, basketball, I have conversations with young men needing to know the truth of the gospel, but not understanding what the words mean. And so, how do I explain? How do we explain things in ways that young people can hear it? And I think sometimes we want to overuse Christianese words, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. And so, how do I come to where they're at, even learn their language? But I'm trying to think of a specific example recently. I think one thing I had a conversation with a young guy about is just we at our conference, over fall conference, talked about how the enemy likes to speak lies into what we hear. And what was true is he heard, yes, there are lies that I feel like the enemy is putting it or speaking into my life that I'm listening to and that I'm allowing to kind of dwell in my mind, and it's still hard to get those out of my mind. I think oftentimes young people, what we're seeing is a trend to go inward instead of outward, and I think both of those need to work together. The more I learn about Jesus, the more I want to share about Jesus. But they're focusing inward because there's so much inner turmoil and pain that they're trying to heal that themselves instead of allowing the Spirit to heal that for them.
It's fantastic. It's kind of ironic, I will say. We're talking about innovation, and the innovation is embrace failure, which is not something anybody really wants to do, right? But I mean, I think you're completely correct in a lot of ways. I can look back over the last couple of years of our ministry here and go, we're doing a lot of different things now because of what we learned in the past, and those would be failures. We didn't do it perfectly. It didn't work out how we wanted or whatever. And they often say that you can become an expert in anything in 200 hours. I don't fully subscribe to this idea, but you spend a lot of time doing it. You think, well, you're just researching, you find some stuff out, and then you're an expert and you practice it perfectly. But no, within those 200 hours, oftentimes you're going, oh, I followed this trail and found a dead end, and then I had to go back the other direction and find a new one. And so there's actually a lot of failure that is worth celebrating, because it seems like it's in those moments where God can really launch success in a ministry. And success is not always, hundreds of people coming to faith, but maybe one person being cared for,
Yeah, and I would say that failure too. Oftentimes, oftentimes with failure with things that are going well, it's sometimes easy to get failure for something I just tried, it failed, okay. But what if something's been going well for 2 years and then it fails? And that's a hard one, because it's
Hmm.
been working, but then now it's not. And so, Lord, okay, give me the eyes to see what you're doing. How can I join you in it? This isn't working anymore. I need to hold all of these things with open hands, because it shifts, generations change. Young people are different cities, different cultures. And so I think it's also being okay with failure further down the road, where something's working, four people come to know Jesus, and then like our young adults group has had seasons of 30 young people and seasons of 2 people coming for young adults group, and being okay with, okay, what am I called to do in this moment? We feel called to have our house open for it every week. Great. So if 2 people come, that's okay. I get way more concentrated time on those 2 people. But if 30 come, that's also cool. But I think dealing with the failure further down the road is also a really hard thing that we have to be okay with.
Yeah. Is there a biblical story or example that helps to guide you that other leaders might be able to learn from? So, what biblical story would you share with a youth leader who's exploring, trying new things, being okay with failure within their ministry?
Great question. I think one that I often go back to is Philip coming to Nathaniel saying, "Come and see." Right, and we see Nathaniel kind of make fun of who is this Jesus from Nazareth, and I think there was a lot of chance of failure with a friend. Hey, come check out who this guy is. I think he's the one. Come with me, and that's sometimes even hardest with your friend, with your close friends. Strangers, sometimes it's way easier to just go, hey, can I tell you about Jesus? Because that rejection isn't as deep when they say no. And so I think of that, because not only did he go into maybe a hard situation with his friend and say, come and see, but he also didn't know much other than Jesus was Messiah, King of Kings, come and meet him. So he didn't have this whole theological background. I'm sure he had some knowing the Torah from studying it growing up, but he also just said, come and see with me. And that's something I think I always want to encourage our young people, young leaders. We often think we need to go inward, learn enough, reach some point. And my question is always, what point is that? What do you need to learn so that you feel comfortable going and telling people to come and see Jesus? Because we see in the Bible over and over, we can go say, come and see right now. All we have to know is that Jesus is King. He's the Messiah that came to save us. So come and see who Jesus is. And so that's a story I think I often go back to and remind young people of. You don't have to know anything to tell people about Jesus. All you have to know is that he is who he is.
Amen to that. God changes people. We don't change people. He uses us in most gracious ways. Is there anything else that you would have to say? Maybe a piece of advice you want to pass along to leaders and young people about innovation and discipleship?
Yeah, I think it's kind of going over what we already talked about. Be okay with
Sure.
failure. Be okay with young people rejecting you. Don't be offended by the rejection. Um, we should be okay with getting offended. Like, we should be okay with hard things being said. God can handle hard things being said about him as well. He can take that on. He doesn't need us to protect every little thing that someone says, but sit in there, listen, actively listen, ask questions about who they are, and share genuine things about who you are. Right? A couple of young people, they'll say, I can't follow Jesus because I have doubt. I go, I struggle with doubt all the time. I have seasons where I doubt things about who God is, and I have to remind myself, but I want it to bring me closer to him, not push me away from him. And so opening up, like you said, I need to share a little bit about who I am, not just ask questions to them, but allow them to ask questions of me, and then be really genuine, because they want to hear, hear who you are, not the Christianese. Stuff's hard with God, but it's good following him. No, these are the things I struggle with. This is what's hard. And that's why I think living a life, disciple making, young people get more glimpses into the hard things of my life. They get to see me not talk to my wife correctly or well, maybe grumpy, frustrated, and then they get to see me apologize to my wife. I get to apologize to them. Nice and humbling experience. Same with my kids. But if I bring people along and let them into my life, they get to see how I fail, how I repair, how I come back to Jesus when those times are hard. And that's what I want them to be able to see.
That's fantastic. Well, Noah, thank you so much. We'll begin to wrap up the episode here, but this has been such an enriching discussion, and I think that this is one that people will want to earmark, highlight, and come back to, because there were some really impactful things that you said at various points throughout our conversation. One is a question that you said it in passing, but you said what identity means when you mess up. That's something that I might highlight for those of you youth leaders listening across Central and Eastern Europe, to have in the back of your mind. Maybe you don't ask that to a young person, but it's like they just messed up. Their shoulders went down, or it's obvious they just took on shame. Like, having that question in the back of your mind can prompt maybe a discussion about, did you just take that onto your identity? Is that possible? Spirit, lead me in a conversation here about how to lead that person to the real anchor of foundation, Jesus, right? So thinking about identity and connecting that to Jesus when people mess up, it seems to be a very important thing that's come out. Another one is, the verse just keeps coming to mind for me, and I'll close with this. Noah, you said, move those stones out of the way, and God's going to do what he's going to do. And I thought, man, it's Paul planted, Apollos watered, yep, and God gives the growth.
Yep.
So I say, listeners, be empowered to walk in the power of the Spirit. Move stones out of the way for God to bring the harvest. Noah, thanks for joining today. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
All right, we'll see you next time, everybody.